Should we start now, or should we start now, or okay, okay, or should we wait like 5 minutes more? Or is it okay? Okay, so okay, okay, all right. Sorry? Okay, yeah. All right. So thanks everyone for coming to this last session of this day. And also thanks everyone seeing the live recording of this session. So I will talk about the entity share module and how to deploy contents. So my name is Florent maybe in English, I don't know the accent. I'm a tech expert at Smile, a French-based company, and before this session, Pierre Duro was also at Smile. We recruit. If you want, do not hesitate to come and see me. I am using Drupal since 2011, and I'm quite active contributor. Some of my contributions is that I maintain or co-maintain a whole bunch of modules of projects. I am an event co-organizer. I help organize some French Drupal camps or the Drupal Dev Days in 2015, and also help organizing meetups, providing a lot of patches, French contributions, French translations, etc. And my mouse is stuck on the left, but no problem. Or, yes, problem. Sorry about that. Okay, it is the sticky doc. Sorry about that. Doc on the left. I think it will, yes, okay, right. So during this session, we will see quickly why sharing content is a business need, why we end up with the entity share module to place the context, and then we will deep dive into the entity share architecture. There will be almost, or I think, no code show during this presentation. Sorry. If people expected code, you can come and see me after this session, no problem. And at the end, I have prepared a 6 minutes demonstration. This talk was, I gave this talk during the Amsterdam DrupalCon in 2019, but this is an updated presentation. Also at this moment, it was both, so it was not recorded. Why sharing content? So maybe you already encountered the case where you need to deploy content between different websites. When you are in the context, for example, of a content hub on your project, when you have a main website providing the content to be consumed by other websites, or also when you need to deploy contents between websites that are not necessarily linked and only deploy some pieces of content. Also, there is the context of industrialization process. For example, you may want to, if a client may want to prepare content on a pre-production environment, and then to deploy it on a production environment. So the client can make a full preview of the rendering of the content, maybe depending on some business needs or business developments. The simple preview available on nodes is not enough, and so the client may want to contribute on a proper dedicated environment. Also, in the other way, you may want to retrieve content from the production environment to your development environment for your tests, depending on if it is a special case of a client in this case, why my content is not displayed properly, etc. So you may want to use entity share for that, or you have a need to retrieve content from production without having to access to a production database dump. Why the entity share module? So entity share, yeah, is 5 years old now, and it was at the end of 2016. At Smile also previously we made the Web Factory module, which was based on core REST web services, and also the module embedded deployment website feature, which was not quite good. But the problem is that the websites were linked together. Also, core REST web services it is okay when you are seeing the representation of one content, but when you need the list of contents, it is not adapted to a problematic. Also, there was and there is still the deploy ecosystem. At this moment, it was quite unstable, and it's still bound to the workspace logic to deploy all your contents at the same time, and not a specific piece of content if you want and need. Also, there is the Acquia Content Hub to integrate with Acquia Content Hub service, but it is with a paid subscription. And I don't know if it exists. I think it exists at this time, but I was not aware of it. Also, the Entity Pilot module, also same as before with third-party integration, paid subscription. Also, I'm not mentioning every solution based on development. If you are using migrate, custom scripts, etc. We want something generic as possible, and to avoid as much as development as possible. So we ended up creating the entity share module, and it was a good timing, because at this moment, at the end of 2016, it was the beginning of the JSON API module. The JSON API module is quite good at providing entities listing, and which was the problem inside the Web Factory module. So we switched to using the JSON API module. JSON API is easy to use and adapt, especially with the JSON API extras module to allow you to alter how normalization and denormalization happens on your in the REST response. And also, since some years, JSON API is in core. And so the goal of entity share is only to provide a UI on top of JSON API to allow one website to retrieve content from another website. So now, main module and concepts. Entity share is based on two main sub-modules. Entity share, the top module, is not doing anything. It is mainly the two sub-modules. And both may be enabled on the same site. So your website can be a client and a server at the same time. There's no problem about that. First, entity share server. You enable it on the website that will provide the content, and it provides the channel system. This concept is inspired from the Web Factory module. The idea is to prepare a JSON API endpoint URL with all the get parameters ready for the client website, and all those. The idea is to prepare something filters based on entity type, bundle, language. You can configure filters, sorts, and so group of filters as the JSON API is able to do. Also, you are able to select which users can access the channel. During I think 3-4 years, you only have the option to specify which user on your server website will have access to the channel. Since some releases, you can specify roles and or permissions as a whole, so it is easier to configure. And the role of the entity share server module is to expose also some server website content structure to ensure the client website will be able to retrieve the data properly. For example, with the JSON API extras module, there is the notion of aliases to not have the standard endpoints, URLs or paths. So you can use aliases, and there is no possibility for a client website to know about those aliases dynamically, and entity share server expose this kind of data too. I don't know if displayed, it is very easy to see, but yeah, it is an example of the channel configuration form where you can select entity type, the bundle, the language, etc. Also, one downside, yes, I got it regularly into the issue queue. It is that you have to configure one channel per language. So yeah, I know. Maybe in a new version it will evolve. I don't know. Secondly, the entity share client submodules to enable the website to pull content. You configure website config entities to inform the website on which other websites you are able to connect to. You since 2021, I think, it is now a plugin system for authentication method. So you can extend it. By default, there is the basic authentication, OAuth2 authentication, also custom header authentication if you need. And we integrate with the key module to ensure if you want to store your credentials inside a secured way. Basically, currently it is in a state and no more in the config entities directly. Since the version 3, you are able also to configure what is called an import config entities. It is a lot of config and a lot of import word, but it is to control how your content will be imported. The problem with the initial version was that content were imported, but you have no way to control how it was imported. And we will see later about that, but the idea is to give seed builders to make Pierre happy. Seed builders able to configure how they want their content to be imported, and so you can have multiple ways to import your content depending on your needs. So it exposes also a basic form to import your contents and also drush commands. And recently also to avoid side effects and to be able to provide advanced features, we store also the information of which content has been pulled from which websites and when in a dedicated new content entities called import entity status. So during the import, basically the basic process is that for each entity exposed by the JSON API on the server website, we check if an entity already exists with this UUID. If no entity is found, we create a new one. If an entity already exists, we create or we update the translation. And we store the UUID in an attribute to avoid infinite loop. And now we will see after that more details about these steps, because now there are more steps in between. Here is a screenshot of an example of the configuration of the remote website. So on the client website, you tell the URL of your server website, and you select which methods you want to use for authentication. Also, you can now have no authentication and consume what is exposed for the anonymous user on your server website. Here's the screenshot of the pull form on the client website to show you. And here is an example of listing of the entity import status after having imported this content. For example, this content referenced an image. Also in this content, there was a paragraphs, etc. So all those entities were imported too. And now the big update of this presentation, it is about the version 3 of Entity Share. Which introduced two new concepts and plugin systems. One is about the import config and import config entity and the import config import process plugin, sorry, and the import policies plugin. We will see about that. And so, yeah, with the addition of import entity status content entities, it fixed some bugs. Because currently, for example, in the pull form, there was a status indicating if the remote entity had been updated or not on the server website. But the problem is that we only have the changed date to be able to compare with, and sometimes it provokes bugs, especially with translations. Indicating displaying that the entity is not synchronized, whereas it has already been synchronized just before, etc. So that's why the import entity status had been introduced. Import configuration. It is to allow you to configure, as I already said, you configure what happens and how during the import. It is inspired from Search API processor plugins, and we will see after that the screenshot. When you configure your processors on your Search API index, it is the same stuff. The goal of that is also to provide a unified way to control the behavior of the import between when you import with the UI or with Drush commands. Because before that, the UI was not able to import a whole channel, whereas with Drush, yes. And also with Drush, it was possible to exclude the already imported entities, whereas with UI, not, etc. So with that, we provide a unified way to control the import. And so you can have multiple import configuration, and for example, you can, in the first time, import only the selected entities without importing all the reference entities from this content. Whereas in the second time, you can have a second import with all the reference entities. And also controlling the stuff, controlling the import. For example, before it was recursive for the entity reference imports. You cannot configure that. Now you can also configure the depths of the import to avoid some infinite loops, or to avoid infinite loops is okay, but depending on the content structure of your website, some imports were taking too much memory, too much time. So you may want to import only, for example, a modified stuff without having to re-import the whole tree of reference entities. Also now there are clear steps during the import, and these steps triggers methods on these plugins. So you can have an import plugin, an import process plugin that will act only at the specified steps, and with the configuration you can choose the weight of this plugin during this this step. I wish maybe in the demonstration, I think it will be better. And so improve the developer experience, because now developers have a way to interact and to alter the import, and by providing configurable plugins and so reusable plugins. Also maybe the same concept of reusability, as we saw in the previous session. Yeah, maybe on the screenshot it is too small, but yeah, here it is a screenshot of the import config configuration. It is the same as the Search API processor configuration, only there are more steps, and yeah, you can configure the weight of each processor inside all the steps. And then after that, the configuration of each processor, of each enabled processors. Import policies. Import policies are plugins declared as YAML file. It is only to have some options, an extendable options list. It allows to mark your imported content with the configured import policies. So your contrib and also submodules in Entity Share may also contrib or custom codes can react and modify the behaviors after the import or during the import, depending on this import policy. In Entity Share, by default, there is a default policy, which provides no special behavior. A create-only policy, and if you use the related import processor, you are able to skip updating already imported entities. And the locked editing, you disable the edit form on the client website. If you need, for example, yes, to deploy your content and to be sure that your content will not be edited on the client website. So with all this new concept and plugin system, we have been able to fix status detection from server website, select recursion depths for entity reference, skip synchronization of imported entities, select revision collection if you want to force the creation of revision when importing your contents or not. Prevent edition of shared entities, allow shared entities to be updated on the client website. Pull content in language not enabled. For example, you can we provide an import process plugin that allows you to select a fallback language in case you, with all the entity reference links, you are importing an entity in a language not enabled. And also some stuff like parsing the rich text editor, links, blocked fields to get the referenced entities, like for entity reference fields, and many more improvements. The entity share ecosystem evolved during the years, and yeah, we are seeing more and more modules provided by the community, or some are submodules and some are dedicated projects. The entity share async to mark content to be pulled later by a queue during cron execution. Entity share diff. Initially, it was directly inside the entity share client module, but finally, we could not rely on the diff module and had to provide our own custom development. And it is a very basic diff feature because all the diff system inside Drupal is intended to compare entities that are on the same website. When it tries to go into entity reference fields, it fails because the entities are not directly accessible, etc. Entity share ECA integration with the ECA module. It is, I think, a replacement of rules. Event condition action, it is the acronym for that. Entity share lock, only doing the preventing the addition of imported content. Entity share cron to be able to configure some automated pull. And recently, I think it was maybe at the end of 2020, Entity share web sub to allow the client website to subscribe to specific content, and when the content is changed on the server website will send notification to all sorry if I have typo, to all the subscriber websites, and so all the subscriber websites will almost instantly pull the changed content. and currently there are more also more extensions. You can see the ecosystem link on the project page. Non-problems and limitations. There is an intensive usage of JSON API extras to avoid some core limitations and handle special fields, which implies that you have more and more configuration to do. It's less and less out of the box already sometimes, depending on your on the field you use on your content. Also, there are still an implementation that relies on an internal classes of some JSON API internal classes, and yes, still, since the beginning, to avoid side effects, config entities and users are not handled. About user, we will see in the next chapter. Maybe it will be handled in the next version. Also, push forms. The logic is that your client website will pull from your server website and not your server website that will push, except with entity share web sub, some kind of. And yes, it is the push features is abandoned because it needs it is impossible. There are some side effects, or it is impossible to patch with JSON API directly for translations or for file feeds, etc. And yes, perspectives and roadmap. So yeah, almost done for a stable release in 5 years. Yeah. And yeah, we currently lack the support of path alias update because when you pull first time it creates a path alias, it's okay. But as the exposed data in JSON API about path is only the path value, but the ID of the path and not a UUID. When having updates on the server website and pulling, etc., it is chaos inside your path because it may update different paths, etc., with this ID, and it's a nightmare. And we found some people are doing some hack proper to their projects. That's why I have not been able to merge it directly, and we've discussed about a solution relying on the JSON API extras module, and maybe with an import process plugins. But the problem is that depending issues on the JSON API extras module, a method is not triggered for this field and answer plugins, and just for the path alias field. Yes, if you are expert in JSON API extras and want to help, welcome. Also, yeah, some recently infinite loop is okay in general, but with some special plugins for the block fields, etc. Yeah, there is a little bug, but so it will need tests. And a new version that will provide the Drupal 10 supports, and maybe I hope user sharing. And as it will break, among other new stuff, but as it will break backward compatibility, especially if your website suddenly share the users, it can be quite disrupting. So a new major version for that. And now the demonstration up. I hope my connection will be okay. Right. Oops. All right. Full screen mode unavailable. Okay. Backup. I have it locally, and maybe with VLC it will be okay. Right, stop. Right, okay. From the beginning, let's go. So here I am the server website, and I will show how to configure a channel. Just before that, is the resolution okay? I don't know if I will be able to do something, but okay, okay, thanks. So yeah, here I'm configuring a channel. Yeah, also the problem is that with my capture software, when I click on the select list, you won't be able to see the options, but you may have the ID. So here, yeah, the new options to configure the access. All users with access channel list permissions, or with a specified role, or specified users. So yeah, there is a channel, and I am preparing also a channel for the French language. And after creating, when you first create your channel, after that you can add the filters and sorts. Also, yeah, to show some specific configuration, on the server website with JSON API extras, you have to enable the include count in collection queries to be able to import a channel as a whole. And also with paragraph, we will see that after that. With paragraph, you have to enable a field and answer plugin for the behavior attributes. On the behavior settings, you have to enable the serialized data plugin. Also, yeah, it is fast. So creating an example content quickly. Yeah, with all the kind of fields. Right, and then I go onto the client website to configure the connection with the server website. But before that, I also have to apply the field and answer plugin onto the paragraphs, onto the paragraph type. Don't worry about the error. Yeah, I think it is because the environment is on PHP 8.1, but maybe it's about that. Here I'm about to configure the connection with the client website. Take in the URL, and I will use basic authentication. So yeah, if you have the K module enabled, you have the possibility to choose, sorry, between local storage, okay, thanks, and the key module. So the connection is done, etc. And now we have to configure how we will import the content with the import config entities. Sorry. And here you can see that by default there are a lot of plugins available, and you can select which one you want. And yeah, I enable some modules to show you that after enabling that, you have a possibility to select the weights of each module during the dedicated steps. Also, here to show you the different steps, there is one to prepare the entity data. When the client website is doing the request on the server website and it gets the list, the result list of entities, you can alter this list with this step. After that, the import is checking each entity if it is importable. For example, if the language is not enabled on your website, it will be skipped, etc. This kind of stuff. And so you have your other import process plugin that can alter this one, prevent update, skip already imported, etc. Then after that, you can re-edit the data, but after checking that it is importable, so it avoids you to alter the data on some entities that you will know that you will not import it. Then it processes the entity. I think it is after creating a stub one, and after you can also alter after the entity will be saved, and all the entity reference, etc., had been done. And also here I show all the configuration of the different plugins. And for the policy, you can select the policy you want to be applied when importing the entity. And also you can choose if you want to update the import policy. For example, you import, for the first time you import your content with a policy. And after that, you will import your content with a different import config. Will you want that this import config erase the previously set import policy? All right, so now the import config has been done, and it's okay. I should have also, yeah, here it is anti-chakron. You can configure which website and which channel of which website, etc., you want to import. And now you have the anti-share pull form. So you have all, yeah, here I'm showing that I have no import entity status. And so here I will be import the test content that I have done before. As you can see, when there is only one import configuration and only one remote website, and also only one channel, but here it is not the case, it is already selected to avoid intermediary steps, as many intermediary steps as possible. You can also search among the content of your server if needed. And here it is not shown, but we use the default pager of JSON API, which is 50 elements. And when the include count in collection queries is enabled, there is a full pager available if needed. Here I'm selecting the entity I want to import. And so yeah, you have a status message telling you how many entities have been imported in which language, and here now there are imported status that have been done. Checking what had been imported. Yeah, it worked. And yes, here I show that the status it is entity synchronized. Now I'm editing on the server website the content to show how it is handled when the content has been updated on the server website. And I will do that with drush commands, just to switch between the methods. Here, yeah, so you have an example of a basic diff feature. And you can see that for float, there is a small problem because I didn't change the float value. And yeah, here I'm switching and I will import the content with drush. Okay, thanks. Please ignore all the deprecation. It is yet still because PHP 8.1. So yeah, there is the command anti-share client pull. Also, there is a command to pull all the channels. You precise which remote website, which channel, and which import config you want. So here I will import it. You can see that the entities have been imported, and if I retry it, no entities had been imported. Why? Because in the import config, I enabled to skip already imported entities. So when there is no update to do, it skips. And so yeah, the entity have been updated. All right. And I think that's it. Right, for the demo. So back to the slides. No, thank you. Thank you. So thanks to our sponsors, which made these events available. Thanks to all the sponsors. Yeah, if you want to stay in touch, I'm already sprinting on UI Suite, some anti-share issues, and diverse stuff. I will be able in the sprint room. So if you have questions or additional stuff after the questions now, if you want to see advanced stuff, do not hesitate to come and see me. And yeah, thanks for attending this session, and also thanks for the live recording. So do you have thanks? So does anyone have a question? Yes. Okay. Let's try it. Oopla. A little bit too soon. Sorry.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry. I would like to ask how it, well, if the model works with paragraph or references entities, like for example, what happens if you have a taxonomy term that is not in the client side, or that kind of situations?
You mean on your content, on your server website, you have your content that is referencing taxonomy?
Yeah, for example, the main, I mean, one case is, for example, paragraphs, because you have an entity with
it is imported automatically with the don't know, should have also
it's, let's say, recursive.
Yes, because maybe you can see on the screenshot, there is a dedicated entity reference plugin that is checked and also forced checked, but you can select the depth of recursion of the import. And so it is imported automatically. If you put -1, it is infinite, the import, but you can select the depth of the import. And yes, it is created. Also, as in your taxonomy terms, as the hierarchy of your taxonomy terms, it is an anti-reference field. The hierarchy of your taxonomy will be imported too, if needed.
That's cool. And thanks. What about, for example, images and files, documents? What about files like images or documents?
Yeah, as it is entity reference, it is the entity is created, and there is a special plugin physical file that will request the physical file of your server, and it will copy it on your client. It is not the file on your server website that will be used, but the one from your client website that had been copied. And so yeah, before this kind of stuff, in the previous version, it was all inside the import process, and it was not configurable, and also intricated each other, this kind of parts of the import. Now it is in dedicated plugins, so easier to maintain and to debug.
Okay, thank you very much. A very good job.
Thank you.
I realized we actually started
maybe
hello,
closer, please. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I realized that we actually invented something ourselves because we didn't know about this awesome model.
No problem.
I will give it a try. Will it work with commerce? Commerce products, commerce variations?
The goal is to have something working for any kind of content entities. So I think it will be okay. I think I already saw some issues in the issue queue for commerce stuff, so I think it will be okay. Also, maybe on a completely separated project without Anti-Share, but with the JSON API module, I played with commerce stuff, and some kind of it is more the problem will be maybe the problem will be more with the JSON API support of Drupal commerce directly than Entity Share, because Entity Share is only a UI to consume JSON API endpoints. So, but if the JSON API endpoints is not ready or has some problem, etc., it will not. The problem will not come from Entity Share, but from the underlying layers.
Okay, I will give it a try.
But you can give a try, and yeah, and I'm eager for feedbacks too. So yeah.
Another question: we have a use case when we share. We need to share a piece of content, the entire page, apart from one paragraph at the bottom, let's say. Do you think it's possible to implement something like this with entity share?
Yeah, if it depends on the structure of your content types. If you put your bottom paragraph in a dedicated field with JSON API extras, you can, for example, disable this field, but it will affect any consumer of the API. But if your server website is also consumed by, I don't know, Vue.js or an Angular app, maybe it will affect that. So you have this solution, but also the other solution will be to code your custom import process plugin that will alter the data, the JSON data, to unset this entry, and so the paragraphs will not be imported.
Cool.
Thanks. I think there is a question at the. Yes.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. One quick. Do you have a date for the stable release expected?
It is not the core cycle release each 6 months. It is when it will be ready. Okay. As pointed, where is my mouse? There are two main issues preventing me for a stable release. Especially the hardest one, it will be this one, because the fix, the workaround is ready in Entity Share, but not in JSON API extras. Okay. The second one, it is just me to have time available to fix it, because someone already provided a patch for one plugin, but also so I gave a look to others plugin that extend the entity reference one, and I found also the same problem inside another plugin. So I want to fix all the plugins at the same time.
Okay, thank you. And just another question. It's about if your client or server is not accessible by security reason to your client, does it? I think no, but submodule to export like flat file and use it.
First, I didn't thought about that. Secondly, yeah, I think it is out of the scope of that. And third, yeah, we regularly encounter this problem, especially with some staging environments that are behind HTTP authentication. HTTP authentication from the server, and not completely unrelated to a Drupal user. And then the problem is that as it is the same header for authentication, from basic authentication, it provokes side effects. Also, there is a side effects. I regularly apply a patch on core, because when you enable the basic auth module from core, when it receives the authentication header, it tries to authenticate you every time, and so you are logged in, but without the cookie session cookie. So it avoids this kind of stuff. And what we do is that on the entity share endpoints, and for all the JSON API endpoints, it is more on the ops layer that it is configured to authorize for specific IP address, this kind of stuff. Or I saw on one project, I gave support to a team that implemented Entity Share, and they extended one of the authentication plugin to add an additional header, and they configured their server to, when they see this header with this value, they know that the request was from there, so they skip the HTTP authentication. This kind of workaround, but not out of the box. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. No more questions? Yes, yeah.
Yes, hello. I was wondering if you could use it between a Drupal 7 and a Drupal 9 website.
I regularly saw this one too. The problem is that there is no JSON API in Drupal 7.
Oh, yeah.
If the JSON API was available in Drupal 7, maybe, but yeah. No, so no, it is only in Drupal 8 plus website, between Drupal 8 plus websites. Right, and if you have more questions, I will be in the Sprints room. I'm on Slack, on Rocket Chat, everything, or Twitter, no problem. I think it is not difficult to join me. Also in the Entity Share issue queue. All right, thanks again.